I'm Amy Heiger. Oh, okay, thanks for remembering that. I'm Amy Heiger. Hi, everybody. I'm the president of the PTLFC-AAUP-AFT, or is it AFT-AAUP? And that's the Rutgers Adjunct Union. It's a really hard time of the semester to bring people together because I know we're all under a lot of stress to finish up our grading, and we thought if we picked the study days, we'd have more of a turnout. Looks like we have a really good turnout. It's fantastic. Thank you all for coming. I am going to answer the question of why we're here. That's my job. So why we are here is because we have a contract that is up at the end of June. And this means that we have an opportunity. That's the first thing. We have an opportunity because our contract is up. In many ways, it's a good thing that our contract is up because it's a really terrible contract. Let's just say it. It gives us no job security or stability, or very little. It fails to provide us with access to healthcare coverage. It makes us wait years and years for a decent raise. And by decent, when we get it, it's still not a livable wage. It gives us no pathway to full-time appointments. So our contract, as it stands, enables Rutgers to treat us as perpetually contingent. No matter how long we've been here, teaching here, no matter what an outstanding job we do as teachers, we are contingent to them. And Rutgers will continue to treat us this way, unless we do what workers around the country are doing now. And we've all been watching it, and it's pretty exciting. They are fighting back. And we can put some stories in the chat. We'd love to talk about this in the breakout rooms, which we will have, but a lot of exciting things are happening. We know what better working conditions look like because we're seeing what unions are winning elsewhere at other comparable public universities. And I just want to spend a few minutes to tell you what UC, the UC system, UC-AFT just won. Some of you may know this, but if you don't, I'm going to run through some of the wins they got, and it's pretty impressive. UC-AFT just won multi-year appointments, right? Starting in the first year that they get hired, they get a year of teaching. If they're there for 2 years, they get 2 years appointments. If they're there for 3 years, they get a 3-year appointment. With each new appointment, they get a raise of at least 3%. They have earned the right to be reappointed before external candidates are considered. They have earned and won a clear pathway for promotion to senior continuing lecturer, which comes with a 9% raise. They earn workload credits for not only teaching, but for doing other jobs that they are asked to do at the university. And they get extra credit for online teaching, so they'll get that raise faster. Over the life of their contract, they will earn an average of 30% increase in wages, right? In addition, when they sign this new contract and they ratify it, they are all getting a $1,500 bonus, a signing bonus. You've heard about this in the private sector, right? That's what they're getting at UC Berkeley. UC non-tenured faculty like us, over the course of their contract will get a 9.5% raise for their lowest members, and that will kick in 60 days after the contract is ratified, and it's a 7% raise for everybody else. One thing that they didn't win, which we want to win, is access to affordable healthcare. Why didn't they win this? They already have it. Right? If you teach in the California UC Berkeley system, they've had this since 2013, 2014. They also have it in the California state system. Rutgers is an outlier, and it's becoming more of an outlier every day. How did they win this? Well, they organized. There's no magic bullet. They organized. They have a really good union, and they spent 2 years organizing. We've been organizing for the past year. Right? We have a ways to go, but that's how they won it. They have very similar circumstances to us in New Jersey. They have a favorable governor, right, who just survived a recall campaign. We had one that just got reelected. Both those governors, our governor here is very favorable to labor, right, and indebted to labor for helping him get reelected. We have a favorable legislature, so do they. We have a supportive tenure-line faculty, as did they, and we'll talk more about that. And we're also experiencing a surge in union activism around the country, it's mentioned, right? Including in higher education. See what's going on at Columbia University. It's really amazing and it's great. There's also, when we talked to them, they told us we have a very favorable media climate, right? The media, the press wants to cover labor movements. They want to cover things that we're doing. That's changed from the last few years. So all this means that we're ripe for change. And for this fight. So how do we win this thing? How do we win what we know now that you all want, because you all returned our survey in record numbers? Thank you very much. Well, what we do know is this: Rutgers is not going to give an inch on any of the things that we know we deserve, right? The status quo suits them fine. Brian Sachs, our vice president, will tell you more about that. But the status quo doesn't suit us. And it definitely does not suit our students or serve them well. And it's not good for Rutgers as a university. So there's no magic bullets here. There are no shortcuts. We win the things that we know we deserve and our students deserve by joining together and fighting for these things and fighting together. So I just want to share with you a quote that I keep above my desk because I need to be reminded of this all the time. And it's this: if you want something you don't have, then you better be ready and willing to do something that you have never done before. So that's on all of us. This is our union. This is us. It's not the executive board doing things. This is all of us. So just putting that out there, think about what that means in your life. So one of the things we've been doing over the past few months is reaching out to our students. Right? We had a campaign this fall called Adjunct Speaks Week. And we want to just kind of review some of the things that we learned from that. And I'm going to, for this, turn it over to somebody who participated, my friend and colleague, James Amemathor, who teaches in political science in Newark. So James, can you tell us about your experience?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that brilliant summary of what we've been doing thus far. Yes, the Adjunct Speak Week was organized, as we all know, November 15th, that week. And I enjoyed it so much that, you know, one of my classes was supposed to be on Thursday. I didn't get a chance to talk to them because we didn't have a class. So even though the week was over, I carried it over to the next week, which was the November 15th. And then because I feel very passionate about this, so I talked to them and it went well. They told me how wonderful it was that they didn't miss the opportunity. So the goal of the Adjunct Speak Week, as we know, was deemed necessarily, or the program was deemed necessary to raise awareness about Rutgers' adjuncts working condition with students. And the organizing committee deemed that approach necessary because we believe that the best way to make any durable, positive change was to get students involved in the struggle. That is because our working conditions are their learning conditions. And I emphasize that again and again and again. In other words, our experience at the university is connected to their learning conditions in terms of the limited time we have to between our appointment to prepare and be in the classroom to teach effectively. They expect a lot from us. And of course, our lack of job security also affects them in several ways. So the goal was to highlight all these things. And then of course, the ultimate purpose was to generate a list of students who could be, or who could help to organize, or student organizing for the contract campaign. Now we had 43 adjuncts who participated overall. And then my experience doing this was very, very, very positive. And I said, I told my students several times, you know, I teach 3 classes, so I got the chance to talk to all of them and let them know that it's a very painful thing to share with them my working condition, you know, in terms of the salary I receive when I am given my appointment letter, and then when I'm supposed to be in the classroom and perform just as they expect. And of course, they told me what it meant to them. One of them said, look, my experience of what they said was that, thank you for sharing this information with us. One of them said, I had no idea that there is a class of university professors that are classified as adjuncts and who are treated the way you described. I thought professors were treated the same in terms of working conditions. And of course, there are a lot of quotes that I can provide. But why is this very important for us to do? We believe this is the most effective way to make any progress. As Amy rightly summarized, nothing is going to change if we don't organize. A former president of my country once said, organization decides everything. We have to organize. In other words, the world does not listen to silence. The world will never listen to silence. And if this is our condition, we better dramatize it and let others know this is what the conditions we work in. And of course, we have to draw student support. And then of course, help students, organizable groups, including even their parents, because they send these messages to their parents so they know what conditions we work in and how these conditions affect them. What we are doing has both short-term and long-term impact. And of course, I emphasize that to my students again and again, we're fighting to make our conditions better. But it's not only our condition, because what condition we work in affect them. And not only that, we're teaching them to be the next professors, when we are not here. And if they don't get good stuff from us, that's going to affect their children and affect their children's children. So the long-term impact is that they have to get organized. They shouldn't look at it as it's only professors' problem or adjunct professors, and therefore good luck to you. It should be their problem as well. And of course, as I said earlier, we want everybody to be involved. The best way we can make impact is to organize and let students know. So, and build that participation over a period of time. So the organization decides that, as I said, we are planning to continue to have this, done at least every semester, adjunct speak week every semester. Because again, as I said at the very beginning, the world will never listen to silence. And if we don't dramatize what our problems are, we can't find solutions to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Wow. Now I feel like I know what it's like to be in your class. It's great. We're going to turn now to David Letwin, who teaches at Rutgers Arts Online in Mason Gross, and he's going to share with us the results of our survey and share his screen, and so we can see who we are and what we want.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. Nice to see so many folks here. Let me just make sure I've got all my proverbial ducks lined up, and I'm going to share the screen. And okay, and now we're going to hit play, and hopefully this all works according to plan. There we go. So as Amy mentioned, we had this very successful contract survey that we sent out. The 481 responses represents the highest rate of return on anything this board has sent out to PTLs in the last couple of years. So that's very significant number, 481 of you. And let's take a look at just sort of, we called this on the slides. And by the way, thank you to Amy and thank you to board member Arnold Lau for helping develop the slides I'm going to share. 160 of us are teaching at more than one university. And that seems to indicate, obviously, that people do that out of need, not out of a desire. Most of us don't take jobs at other schools because we want to spend more time commuting, or we want to have to deal with 2 or 3 different institutions, but because we can't get the job we need at one university. So it seems to indicate more out of need than desire, obviously. Whoops, right, hang on one sec. There we go. 300 plus want Rutgers to fund professional development and provide professional support for teaching, including things like laptops, offices, the question of tuition remission, support for academic conferences. And taken together, what this seems to indicate is that most of us are not just doing this to pick up one extra class because we want to, or we have a full-time job and this is just something we do for pleasure, although we are passionate about our classes, but it indicates that people want to see this as a career job. and need the support that comes along with a career job. That's not only for our benefit as employees, but ultimately it's for the benefit of our students as well. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And if we don't have that support, that has material effect on and psychological effect on our students as well. And then at the bottom, 20% of PTLs self-pay for health insurance or go without. And of course, one way of looking at that is to go, wow, that means 80% are not in that situation. But that's not really the way to think about it. 20%, first of all, is a sizable majority, and 100% of us should have coverage. Nobody should go without. And particularly when adjunct faculty at other universities are now getting healthcare through the universities. I think, Amy, I forgot if you mentioned this point, but at UC, they didn't need to make healthcare a demand in the contract because they already had it. And so we're behind in that regard. And also, although it's 20% is a minority, the role of a union is to look after its most vulnerable members. And so we have to stand up for everybody, and everybody deserves healthcare. And so this 20% is a significant number. This is how this translates into what we might be using as what we look to be using as the basis of demands for the upcoming contract campaign. So here's what you told us about what's important to you. And if you'll remember from the contract survey, there were a number of questions asked that you were asked to respond about the level of importance. And there were 4 possible answers: very important, somewhat important, not important, or neutral. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some results. Number 1, job security and long-term contracts. 90% of you, over 90%, said that was very important and somewhat important. And note that within the category of very important and somewhat important, that is, if we take that as a 90+% block, the majority of that was very important. And that's for all of these questions we're looking at. Sort of little sub bullet point there is timely appointment letters. 85% of you said that was very important and somewhat important. And the reason it's linked to job security and long-term contracts is for the obvious reason that if we had those things, we wouldn't need to be arguing over timely appointment letters. That would come with the long-term contracts and job security. Number 2, getting healthcare coverage from Rutgers. 75% of you said very important and somewhat important. And so what that seems to indicate is that some of you may not fall into that 20% of not having healthcare or paying for it yourself, but maybe that the healthcare coverage you have is not satisfactory. It may also indicate that what we should recognize, which is that whether any of us as individuals have other options for healthcare, that doesn't change the fact that Rutgers should give us access to the same healthcare that the NTTs and the other full-time faculty have. Number 3, over 70% of you said path to full-time employment was very important and somewhat important. And that obviously sort of speaks for itself, that we do not see this as just piecemeal work. The majority of us see this as a career. We want a career out of this, a sustainable career, not just something we get an underpaid career and under-resourced career. And 4th, and this will be a big one in terms of our contract demands, is what's called pay parity with full-time non-tenure track faculty. Pay parity, sometimes referred to as fractional appointments. And the idea here is that we would get paid equally with what the NTT, the non-tenure track faculty, get paid on a per class basis. And I'll show you a slide that will make that clear in just one moment. 90+% of you said this was important. And then again, a little sub bullet there, compensation for the other things that we do, student advising, administering course sites, and additional duties. 80% of you said that was very important and somewhat important. And again, we have this as a sub bullet point, because if we get pay parity, those issues will go away. That will be taken care of by paying us equitably. So let's take a look at what we mean here. Equal pay for equal work. What pay parity does not look like. So here's a bar graph that Arnold put together based on the survey. And on the left, the shorter bar is PTL salary. On the right is NTT salary. And just to explain this, on the left is thousands of dollars. So this was based on the idea of a 3-3 course load for fall and spring. And for a 3-3 course load on fall and spring, the average NTT salary is now a little over $90,000. For NTTs, I'm sorry, for PTLs, it's around $34,000. So there's almost a $60,000 gap between the average salary for a NTT teaching 6 classes and a PTL teaching 6 classes. And the idea of pay parity and fractional appointments would be that you take the number of classes and divide it into the salary, and that gives you a per class figure. And that's what we should be paid as. So if you take 90,000, divide it by 6, you get 15,000 a class. Now you might argue, well, NTTs do other things in addition to teaching, so you might moderate the figure, but we're roughly looking at $15,000 a class. And the argument would be that we deserve to be paid on that basis. So that if you teach 2 classes a semester, you're getting 30,000 a semester. If you teach 3, you're getting the same appointment as the same level of pay, the same scale of pay as an NTT. And just to broaden this out a little bit, now we've added a bar, and that bar on the right is one of the assistant coaches for the Rutgers football team, Sean Gleason, and he makes a little over $1 million a year. So that's just a visual representation that sort of speaks for itself. You can see this thin blue line at the bottom there of PTLs, and then more for the NTTs, and then the assistant coach. And he's not the only assistant coach on the team, and the football team isn't the only team. So you can see the salaries for certain people. Some people are more equal than other people, as Orwell said. Let's take a look at another slide. This will be the final slide, and this compares not only the PTL NTT salary with the assistant coach, but then on the far right is the $4 million salary of head coach Greg Schiano. And again, I really don't think it needs any commentary from me. You can draw your own
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Thank you. Sums it up in one word. So there's a lot more information included in the survey. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for 1 second. And I believe Marie or Emily are going to post the link to the, there you go. Again, if you'd like to review the full results of our contract survey, you can find them here. You can just click on that. And we also wanted to say that we have a research committee set up to help analyze this kind of data, help look into other contracts that other adjuncts have. And we need as many people helping out with that as possible. So if you're interested in getting involved in the research committee, working with the research committee, Emily, I believe, has just posted, there it is, a link. If you're interested in helping with the research committee, please indicate that here and you can fill out that form. So there you go. You can access the results for yourself, and you can hit us up with any questions. You can put questions in the chat or write to us. There will be time as this contract campaign builds to answer any questions, to entertain more discussion on this issue. But for the moment, that's what we have. Once again, thanks to Amy and Arnold. And I am now going to pass it over to our Vice President, Brian Sachs, who teaches at the School of Communications in New Brunswick and also the philosophy department at Camden. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks for that introduction, and thanks to everybody who was involved in putting that together. That was really excellent. I wanted to talk today about what we're up against. And in short, what we're up against in winning these demands is the non-responsiveness of the university to the rightful demands that we're making here. And we could start this narrative a lot of places, but if we went back to just a spring 2020 petition, the petition that we circulated that had many, many hundred signatures and got over 1,000, I believe, had 3 core demands: that PTLs be rehired who were dismissed in fall 2020, that course offerings be restored, and that class sizes be returned to fall 2019 levels. That was our first. We also asked that faculty be given a significant voice in how to safely and fairly return to campus, which of course now remains an issue. And most simply, that PTL appointment letters be sent in a timely manner. We saw that we had an 85% response rate to that question in our survey. None of these were adequately responded to by the university. And I can quickly run through their failings and provide a little bit more information about what we are up against at the present moment. that easiest of demands to meet for timely appointment letters. You may recall that Executive Vice President Mogi said publicly at our town hall that this was a perfectly appropriate professional request that PTLs are making, and implied that it should be granted. Our board had reached out to him on several occasions to assist with this, and we did not receive an adequate response in any way, shape, or form. And I believe our last inquiries were not responded to. Amy can confirm. Now, speaking about our first petition demand, many of you are aware that during that fall 2020 semester, Rutgers needlessly fired 20% of its adjunct workforce, despite no real drop in enrollment, and then raised course caps and shoehorned students into the courses that remain. They did this to save about 1/10 of 1% of their almost $5 million budget. Meanwhile, PTL levels have remained below their fall 2019 numbers, and courses have not returned everywhere to the pre-pandemic cap levels. Even more gallingly, or just incredibly galling, during the same period of time, Rutgers was setting up a secret financing scheme for the athletics program that racked up tens of millions of dollars in new debt. They threw away more than 10 times as much money as they saved by firing PTLs on an unethical and dubious self-dealing scheme that was such a waste and embarrassment that the university may simply write off the losses instead of requiring the athletic department to pay the money back, loan themselves the money, and may not even require that it be paid back. There's no clearer statement of the university's skewed priorities than this saga. I think Marie or somebody can post a link to an article about this in the chat if people haven't read up on it. I want to get to the third concern too about health and safety, but everyone should know first that this summer, Rutgers reached out to our unit and a few other of the unions on campus to explore extending our current contract without entering full bargaining. Now, we were skeptical about their seriousness to do this, and we certainly communicated that to our coalition partners, but other of our partners wanted to explore it, and so to remain in solidarity with our fellow coalition unions, we explored it. Rutgers proposed a 2.25 raise across the board with no additional job security for PTLs or other unionized workers. Now, that just simply wasn't going to be sufficient. So crew unions responded with a groundbreaking and progressive counter that asked for a flat dollar amount raise, which is just 1% higher above what the university had offered in terms of dollars, but it was done in a way that would share the salary gains evenly across the coalition so that the lowest paid workers, as David showed we are, the lowest paid workers like us would receive the largest net gains. The proposal would have raised PTL salaries at the university a total of 15% in 2022-2023. Still less than we deserve, not enough to put us on par with NTTs, but a large narrowing of the gap. The university never even seriously considered it. Despite agreement throughout the process that we all needed to work quickly and respectfully, Rutgers did what it always does. It dragged its feet and then made a non-serious counter that essentially rejected the premise of our earlier offer. Basically, they told us, take the 2.25% or leave it. We tried one more time to counter several weeks ago, but Rutgers has still not responded to our latest counter as of earlier this week. I think their silence speaks volumes. Because our coalition proposed to spread the money out in a progressive fashion, which would strengthen our coalition, Rutgers just walked away. That's who this administration is. Meanwhile, in Camden this fall, you may be aware that a dean who's friendly to faculty was fired for speaking out about the improprieties of the pay equity process that affect our full-time colleagues. This has set off a firestorm of activism in Camden around academic freedom and has only made clear, I think, the lengths to which the university is willing to go to silence anyone, even a dean who publicly dissents from the party line on labor relations. Now, to return briefly to health and safety on campus. This is arguable, but I think we thankfully dodged a bullet this fall with the vaccines turning out to be very protective against serious disease with Delta, even though they weren't fully protective against spread. That doesn't change the fact that Rutgers were perfectly willing to disregard our safety by failing to take public health measures we've been asking for 18 months. The administration, for instance, has just been unwilling to take on any additional expense to upgrade ventilation across the university or to test everybody, vaccinated or not, on campus. We've asked for these things again and again, only to be told in effect that they don't have to do them, so they won't. Now, of course, indications are that a new variant of concern is enormously transmissible. You may have seen the news at Cornell University this morning, which is a large outbreak in their student population, they believe, with many cases of the new variant. Many of those students, I think the overwhelming majority, were vaccinated twice at least. They've effectively shut down the campus today. So who knows exactly what's coming this next spring. But the key point is that Rutgers wishes to keep an iron grip on the setting of the conditions of our work, even as they relate to vital health and safety. We had a request for a strong voice in that petition in setting COVID policy. They just ignored it. The coalition only has a small, irregular advisory process with Rutgers. People like Amy Baruth have been instrumental in helping Rutgers meet this crisis, even in that irregular advisory process, but our voice has been muted. And I just find this personally intolerable, I have to tell you, particularly during a deadly pandemic and in a population like PTLs who are among the most student-facing university employees. We skew older in age, and thus we're the most among the most vulnerable for the worst outcomes. We deserve a fuller public health response than we've seen, but Rutgers won't incur the expense if they're not made to. They treat us as if we're disposable.
Brian,
So there's more I could say. I'm sorry, I'll wrap up. I know that we're over.
I have a question.
Josh,
you
is
guys
it okay?
talk.
Josh, I don't want to cut you off, Josh. Is it okay? Just give me 90 more
Oh,
seconds.
sure. I'm sorry.
I want to get to how we win here. And we only win one way, and that's to build power and demonstrate our power to management. That is our board's primary focus. We've been hard at work organizing under difficult conditions imposed by the pandemic. Many of us have come to the conclusion that the transformative demands that you heard David speak about in our survey, we're going to have to be prepared to take strong collective action, up to and including shutting down the university if necessary. Now, PTLs alone, no matter how organized we are, and we need to be highly organized, we'll struggle to do this. We need to do it in coalition with our 20,000 union worker allies at Rutgers. This will give us tremendous power. Now, the best way to coordinate that, well, we're here to talk about that. One exciting idea that has emerged is to merge units with the full-time faculty grad unit. We've been collaborating for several months with the full-time unit leaders on a number of topics, including this possibility, and they're very interested in it. In fact, tomorrow, I believe they're planning a vote in their executive council to see if they can officially authorize exploring a merger with us and the 1,300 medical faculty of RBHS and BHSNJ. If we decide to go forward with the merger process, it would require our union undertake a massive campaign this spring. We'll need 50% plus one of our unit members, which is probably close to 900 in all, to be safe, sign cards to declare their interest in this. Our goal would be to force the university to accept this merger without it having to go to the Public Employment Relations Commission, or PERC. But we'd have to plan for that possibility, which will require that 50% plus one agreement. The key point is, if we merge our units, we would be negotiating one contract for both PTLs and full-time faculty instead of the two contracts that we currently must negotiate, ours and theirs. There's other possibilities as well, but this is the most powerful one and the one that would take the most commitment and effort to bring off. And so I know people will have lots of questions and ideas and concerns they'd like to raise. So we thought we would break out shortly into small groups, to gather your thoughts and answer the questions that we can, but also to collect comments and questions that we can't yet answer and bring them back to the group for a full debrief. This is the way maximum number of people can weigh in. So thank you for hearing me and for hearing everybody else. I'll toss it back to Emily to help guide us through that process. And thank you, Josh, for holding the question.
So I'm still making the breakouts now. So maybe Josh can ask his question while I'm finishing that up.
Yeah, I've been at Rutgers for 13 years, and I've heard the union talk about dealing with the administration. Who are the people that we are actually supposed to be dealing with? It's always been an abstraction, sort of like the mythical man, so to speak. Who are the personalities involved in the decision-making process that are keeping the union down and keeping and disregarding our demands and not responding? I think that would be helpful to all of us if we could have a list of those names so that we could put faces and titles to those names, because I have no idea who they are. Either, and whether they're at New Brunswick or they're representing the entire adjunct faculty through the 3 schools. I don't know, but I'd like to know, because I think we could target them personally as well. That's just my suggestion, but I don't know, maybe you guys could give us some information about who we are dealing with. Because I don't know, it's always the administration, which I don't know what that really means anymore.
That is such a great question, Josh.
Well, I
Well,
did mention a couple names, but there's other names too.
Yeah, I mean, could you provide us with a list? I think it would be helpful to the
Well, I
entire
think
union.
I think the guy at the top we know, right? Is Jonathan.
Are we talking about
Holloway.
Holloway?
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's the, right? Then there's his underlings, and we could give you a list of names. The thing is, we need to figure out a strategy how to target and who to target about what. And
Right.
part of their plan, they always try to obscure who's making decisions. You know that. You can't
Yes.
find accountability. And in a public university, that should not happen. We should know who's making decisions. Who made those decisions about the athletics? Who knows? But you gotta go to the top, because he's responsible for overseeing the university. But on different things, we will target different people. And I like what you're saying here. It's true. These are people. Management is not a thing. It's people making decisions. There's a board of governors that makes decisions. Very few are educators. I don't know how that happens, but they're all corporate people. I'm gonna, we could generalize. So there's a lot of places to go here.
Well, when I moved to New Jersey, I remember I'm from New York City, and my wife and I moved here when the Christie administration was in full swing. And if I remember correctly, Christie was the one who was espousing the notion that the teachers union should be baseball batted in the head.
Well,
So, to what degree is that animus towards unions and teachers unions? How far does that reach into the board of governors, into the state legislature? I mean, is that something that are we dealing with a bigger problem
Josh,
than we know about?
I hate to cut you off, but we have a really full schedule, and I'd love to talk about this. Call me.
Okay.
Call any one of us.
Josh, I have thoughts.
But let's do the breakout rooms that Emily has set up so we can really have a good discussion and meet each other.
Okay.
And reminder to please take notes here. Hi, everyone. Please join your breakout groups to continue the discussion. You should be assigned.
Thank you. I'm going to facilitate the reports from the breakout rooms. There were 10 breakout rooms, and we've got 10 minutes. So that means we have to be very brief in our presentations. We had a terrific, we had a terrific session. We have extensive notes that are going to take much longer than a minute, but Hannah is going to give us a summary in a minute, aren't you, Hannah?
I'm gonna try. So we ultimately discussed largely the advantages and disadvantages of both options, mostly for the merger, which I think we were voicing mainly our opinions and ideas of what could possibly potentially go wrong and what we would ultimately have to do in order to achieve the goals that we want and make sure that our representation is seen and felt within that merger, making sure that PTLs are properly seen and that our issues are also prioritized. We also, besides that, just mentioned some of the aspects of the timeline and expectations of both routes, whether the legal or the merger, and what would ultimately be asked of us in order to achieve the goals with either option.
Okay. And would you say, Hannah, that the majority sentiment was one way or another?
I would say that the majority sentiment was towards the merger, with a few reservations just concerning how we would be able to get our voice across.
Good. All right. Breakout room number 2. Can you give us a report? I've got my stopwatch going. That was good, Hannah.
I think that's me. Yeah, we had a great conversation. I think something that really stuck out to me was how helpful it was to compare our status pay wise and benefits wise as compared to TAs, because they have a lot of things that we don't have already, and those things that we don't have deeply affect our students. And I think another really cool point that was brought up by Sonia was that the students' needs also deeply impact us. While we're there for the students, their needs add a lot of additional labor to our job, and the university just really isn't addressing that in an apt way. Yeah.
Okay. So I know Emily has a Zoom poll set up for us at the end of this, so we'll have a chance to get take the temperature of the meeting. All right, and room 3.
Yeah, so that was the room that I was in with Brian. I would say most of our discussion was in line with the previous 2 breakout groups. We mostly just talked about the dynamics of what the merger would look like with all the different units, and just like the history of our organizing power and what it was in the past and what it is now. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Would you say your room was supportive of the merger?
I don't think I could say there was a specific sentiment yet.
Okay. All right. And room 4? Who's going to speak?
That's James's group.
James, you want to give us a report? James is, I think, maybe frozen there.
Me? This James?
Oh, different James.
Oh, no, I'm in group 9.
James Memasor.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think.
Too many Jameses today.
Yes, I think a majority with reservations want to do something different, by merging and see what that can lead to. Of course, we have our specific needs that full-time faculty don't, worry about in terms of maybe when do we get our appointment letters. So these are edges that we can work with and see how we iron them out. So I think majority said, yes, we want to do something different and join them.
Okay, thank you for that summary. Group 5.
That's Amy's group.
Amy?
Oh, okay, I didn't know what number we were. Yeah, I mean, I think most of us, Amy, we were Amy Birth too, were in favor of this. Some of us very much in favor, and some of us, okay, this sounds like a good idea. And anybody else from my group here, from my room? We had a really nice discussion, but it was also about retaliation, a fear of that, and getting active in what, and how insecure our jobs are, which was a great question. And we need to, we need to be frank about it. That happens at Rutgers. But union activity is protected. It's illegal to retaliate for engaging in union activity. You can file a grievance if that happens. And most of the full-time faculty and NTTs who hire us are union people. So, just to keep that in mind. But we had a big discussion about that too.
Okay. And group 6?
Hey, everybody. So I'm just going to run through these really quickly. What is the benefit? Is it more leverage? Is that the goal? Another question was, will we get buried in the full-time unit? So it was the idea of leverage versus loss of autonomy. The leverage part obviously being the numbers. Earlier PTL efforts failed in part because of lack of support from the full-time unit. Would merger change that? Would being in their unit allow us to engage with and confront full-timers more directly to get the support we need? Would we retain our own board within their unit? different units and constituencies have different interests, or what we refer to as cultures. And how would that be resolved? How would these competing things be resolved? And finally, one person did say emphatically that we should remain independent, and that a real challenge is to get more adjuncts to be more active in our own independent unit.
Yeah, great conversation you had. Of course, the devil is in the details, and that's clear, right? Which is, I think, the sentiment we're hearing from most of the groups. Let's move on. Is it group 6?
7.
7. I lost count.
Yeah, I believe I'm group 7. Yes, we have more information from my group, and my group are opposing we joining or merging together, because I have 2 members of my group who also teach in some other universities and had similar experience after there was a merger. They also listed the concern they have and the issue that happened after the merger. One of it is that the full-time, those who are full-time, will only have a priority for their own issues. And the issues of adjourn is going to be the last one. That's what one of our group members saying. He also advocates strongly that it's better we remain 2 different unions and maintain our uniqueness. And another issue we discuss is that we can also collaborate, but not join as one. And then because of the issue, not only that we're going to lose our voice, we'll lose our board. Remember, some of us who are also leadership here, they're not gonna be able to be in that decision making or be able to contribute and decide on how things that affect us in our uniqueness. And then one of the same person also mentioned that it's better for an adjourn to be the person fighting for his issue than someone who is a full-time, because a fellow adjourn understands what is your problem, including issues of healthcare, including issues of pay parities, and a lot of issues which adjourn people have been facing as challenges over the years. Those in full-time, they don't understand it, and it will be difficult for them to be able to stand for us. So then another member of my group also were trying to understand, do we have any research or information that will help us to make any better informed decision, or look at what other people have done in the past, including who make decisions that affect us in what we do every day? How do we reach out to them? How do we able to pass our concern or make them to feel the impact of what we are feeling? That was another decision. Then another thing also my group look at is, it's true that if we're 2 different unions, they can also use the divide and rule tactics, whereby they offer one group something better and offer the other group something lesser. And even though merging together, we have a better collective bargain, but also it has a lot of disadvantage, including losing our uniqueness, losing our voices. And again, are we going to have the same contract deadlines? And what are other things that will affect us? So majority of my group are of the opinion that when we are a different union and collaborate with our sister union, that even if we decide now we want to embark on maybe a strike, it will create a better media attention than when we are lost as one union. So these are what my group discussed, and it seems that there is no time. So in my own opinion, I feel strongly we should be able to, mobilize and get more people so that they can be able to voice out their concern and will be more stronger in pursuing our objective. Thank you.
So group 7 seems to have lots of apprehensions and fears and some skepticism. Okay, these are all issues we'll need to address. I'm going to move on to group 8.
Okay, group 8, the general sense was in support of unity, that seeing it in from a general sense that makes sense of a way to progress, but there were some questions and concerns. One question that was raised is the full-time unit supportive of this kind of merger? What is the attitude of people there towards this, and what are their motivations? And then even though in general most people were in our group were tending towards favoring unity, there were several people brought up the importance of representing our concerns. One person who teaches at other universities said that in unions where adjuncts are together, that their voices are often ignored. And so we would have to do this in a way that made sure that that didn't happen. And we'd have to maintain some kind of semi-autonomous voice just to make it work for us. So, but overall, I would say that our group was supportive.
Okay. I would just like to say one thing, that the process can be stopped or reversed at any point. People should keep that in mind, right? Once we start, it doesn't mean that we can't change our minds if things aren't going the way we like. So group 9.
I think that's us. We didn't have nearly enough time. We were very jammed with conversation, and a lot of points came up. I think many of them have already been noted, so I'm going to try and say whatever things were new compared to the previous reports, although we were also talking about the potential for us losing our autonomy and whether there would be a structure in place to make sure our voice got heard and we didn't get abandoned by the full-timers or whatever. But people in our group, unlike the last report, were interested in looking at other examples for their positive comparison, NYU and Columbia. And it was pointed out that the times are changing and we're in an era of growing worker activism and concern for fairness for workers, and that we should keep that in mind. And our situation as contingent faculty might be very central to all that, and that the full-timers, many of them do understand that, but the full-timers do need to know that how important our role as contingent faculty is, not just like feel sorry for us or something. So I think that in general, we had a sort of mixed reaction, but maybe leaning towards support for merger. But with many of these qualifications, the most important thing is that we don't lose our autonomy. There has to be some kind of structure, I think.
Okay. Seems that there's never enough time for breakout rooms when you have a half a dozen academics in the room, right? The conversation could go on forever. So group 10.
So our group I'd say overall, was in favor of the merger. And I think that people thought it would provide a united front for us as teachers, as educators, and that we don't see enough of a reason to stay separate, given the history of the labor movement and seeing what is possible. And I think basically our group wanted just more information. I think just learning more about how this works with other unions, or, basically just more information needed. So that's a quick take on our discussion.
Okay. I see we're rushing this a little bit, and I apologize for that, but it is 1:15. So I'm going to turn the floor back to Emily.
Can I just make a point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you also, Marie, mention the other points that we made about the social justice initiatives?
Yeah, so this is, a little off the topic of the merger, but something James brought up that I do think is important is that he and we would like to see an identity of the union moving forward, regardless of whether we merge or don't merge, that puts social justice at its core. So racial justice, gender justice, and that these are not separate from labor issues, that this is like at the heart of what we want out of our union, which I think is something that regardless of whether we, again, like choose to merge with the full-time unit or we don't, that's something that that we want to see moving forward. And there were some other really good points brought up in our discussion. They're in the notes document. I can share that with everybody to review. I'll actually do that now, but thank you, James.
Okay, very important point. Thank you. All right, Emily, I'm turning over the gavel.
Great. So I'm going to launch a poll. This is just a temperature check for the room. This is not a binding vote. This is just asking of this group, do you think we should pursue a merger with the full-time unit? So I'm going to launch that now.
How do you vote exactly? I see.
David, I think we're co-hosts and hosts. I don't think we can vote.
Oh, we
Voter
can't.
suppression right here.
Somebody help
All right,
David
that
with his
sounds-
computer again, please.
All right.
I just realized that.
So we're at 94% of people here participated. And
Share the results.
yes, share results. Can you see?
Yeah. Yes.
So majority says yes. If you say no, a little more say they want more information. All right. Great. So I think that's the end of this discussion for now. You know, if you have more questions about this, please reach out to us because we're still in the information gathering phase. So it's really important to hear from you all. Now I'm going to pass it on to Matt for next steps.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today. I just wanted to bring up real quick, if you were interested in what we were talking about today, and you really want to know more and get more involved, you can absolutely reach out to us about joining the negotiations committee, the organizing committee, the media committee, the research committee. If you're interested in being a department liaison for your department, let us know. That all those you can indicate in the sign-in survey that we've posted in the chat a few times now. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is that each campus has a liaison for t-shirts. I'm the liaison for Camden, and Amy is for Newark, and Howie is for New Brunswick. You can indicate whether or not you want a t-shirt in that sign-in form too. And we have plenty to share. That's it.
But you have to be a member.
Yes. And last, to close out the meeting, I'll pass it to Goddison to talk about joining the union if you're not a member yet. Is Goddison? Oh, yes, you're muted. 1 second. Goddison, are you? Oh, great. You're
Yes.
muted.
Hello, everybody. My name is Godson Orji. I'm a union member and represent my department in the School of Bluestein. I'm glad everyone was able to come today and join the meeting and then voice their opinion and concern. And this is what makes us to be better when we have a more stronger number and more people participating. So I encourage everyone. For those who have not become a member yet, please, I will really appeal to you to join. You know, there is a lot of benefit we can get when we all collectively work together as member of this union. Part of it is that we could achieve job security. We could be able to, you know, fight for demand like pay parities and be able to get healthcare, which over 20% of our current members do not have access to healthcare. So there is a lot to benefit every one of us when we have a more stronger voice and be able to fight for our contracts. So I look forward to everybody joining. For those of us who are here today who have not joined, and I'm glad we all contributed very well, especially in the break room. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Could I just say that if we do move forward on this, please keep checking your email, because if we want to do this, we have to do it quickly and we got to pay attention. We all got to be part of it. If we don't want to go ahead, we still have to do those things because we need to build our power in regardless. It's all part of the same effort.
Great to see everybody.
Great to see everybody.
Wonderful that people could come so late in the term when we're all getting up to our ears and grading.
Sorry, we can't be more great. Great.
You know, I just wanted to say one thing as we talked about our the demand section earlier. You know, when people demand things that they're entitled to, and they demand fairness, when they demand justice, they're always told by people in power, it's unrealistic or you're crazy for asking for it. And we're not unrealistic and we're not crazy. What's unrealistic and crazy is the status quo.
Thanks, Dave.
Elon Musk. It was looking crazy.
Be well,
Good
everybody.
to see everybody. Happy
Be well,
holidays. Stay
everyone.
safe.
Okay.
Everyone,
Bye, everyone.
Taking
Happy
care.
holidays.
happy holidays. Take care.